Okay, can we see the slideshow? Everything's good there?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so welcome back to Women in Torah. So today our second class of four is going to be the second matriarch of the Jewish people. Her name in English, we say Rebecca. In Hebrew, we say Rivka. I'll kind of bounce back and forth between the two. So I wanted to just, start with a family tree, but also to understand that like where Rivka fits in the family tree. Okay, so we have last week we talked about Avraham and Sarah, or here we have them still named as Abram and Sarai. They have their child Isaac, who's going to continue with the Jewish line, the Jewish mission. And we're going to be introduced to Rebecca when she comes to marry Isaac. And we see that she's actually the daughter of one of Abraham's nephews, Bethuel, and she has a brother, Laban. And his two daughters, so Rebecca's nieces, are going to be the third and fourth matriarchs of the Jewish people, who we'll talk about in the next two classes. Okay. So we see that this is, all coming kind of from the same family, but from different family lines. All right. So this is where Rebecca fits into the story in terms of the family tree. And she is our second matriarch. She will marry Isaac. Okay. And she herself is an extremely righteous woman. And so some questions that come up is, where did she come from? So I'm showing you the tree here. But really, what can we learn from her? And what does Rivka give us? The future Jewish women of history. What does Rivka give us? So when we look at this family tree, what's interesting is that, it takes until the fourth generation. It's just something to think about in the back of our minds for this week, and we'll come back to it in the next 2 weeks. But why does it take, it's something to think about, why does it take three to the third generation, or really the fourth generation, for the Jewish people to become like a bigger family of people, right? So we have Abraham and Sarah, their one son, Isaac, marries Rebecca. They have two sons who we're going to look at next week, and one of them continues with their mission. So it's just going like one at a time, right? So why is it taking so long to get to the point where now Jacob's children will become the beginning of the Jewish people, and they will be the 12 tribes known as the 12 tribes of Israel? And it's a good thing to kind of maybe think about over the next week. Why does it take so long? Why doesn't it happen immediately? Why aren't all of Abraham's children, or why aren't both of Isaac's children on mission? And so one of the things that we can take away from it, without getting too far into the weeds with that question, is we learn here that even the formation of the Jewish people and who they're going to become and what they're going to bring to the world and how they're going to contribute was not an easy process. Because if it was easy, it would have happened right away. So it's clearly not an easy process. And this is really one of the most important lessons that the Jewish people bring to the world, is that life is not easy. Life is a struggle. And it takes a lot of hard work to really have a meaningful life and to have progress and growth. Okay. So as I said before, Rebecca is the daughter of Bethuel, one of Abraham's nephews, and her brother Laban, we see here, okay? But what is it about her father and her brother that we need to mention? And it's that both of these men in that line of the family are idol worshippers, just like their great-grandfather, Abraham's father, Terah, and the other sons, Nahor and Haran. And they come from a family of idol worship, which was the way civilization was at the time. And that was how society was. Remember, Abraham and Isaac are rare. They're the outsiders. They're the outliers. So how is it that Rebecca ends up with Isaac? And the other thing to understand about her father and her brother is it's not just that they worship idols, it's that they're really living a life without morality. Rivka is first introduced in the Torah because Abraham's servant, like his aide, Eliezer, who's part of their family, goes out looking for a wife for Isaac, for Abraham's son. Abraham says, go and find Isaac a wife. He needs to get married. He's coming to the age. And Rashi writes about Rivka's father. He says, Bethuel was evil and tried to prevent Rivka from going with Eliezer when they eventually meet. And he even tried to poison Eliezer. So we're seeing here, we have a man who's willing to poison somebody, okay? So he's really turning to immoral behavior. He's also described, and his brother later on, as we'll talk about in the next 2 weeks, as, they're not honest in business. They are thieves. Like, they're not honest, moral people. So how could it be that Rivka, comes from such a family and she becomes the second matriarch of the Jewish people? Like, she becomes who we descend from? If we're supposed to bring morals and ethics into this world, how could it be that she comes from such a family? Why would it be why would God make it that the beginning of the Jewish people comes from such immoral behavior when we are supposed to be the bringers of morality to the world? And we see in the family tree that Rachel and Leah, the next two matriarchs, also come from that household. So Rabbi Ben Zion Yadler, who lived in the 1900s, authored a book called Tiferet Zion. And here's what he said. In his book, he said, since God knew that the Jewish people would be spread out among the nations when in exile, and typically people are influenced by their surrounding culture, God wanted our matriarchs and patriarchs to come from families like this and live amongst these people in order for them to build their muscles, so to speak, I'm paraphrasing here, and withstand their influence. In this way, the rabbi says, their descendants will have the strength to hold on to their religion, even in exile, since the acts of the ancestors are a sign for their descendants, like I've said last week. So Rivka stands out. This is what makes her so righteous in her family. She stands out in her family, like her uncle Abraham. She was raised in a world of deceit. We're going to see with her brother, there's a lot of deception. And this is exactly why she is chosen as the perfect wife for Isaac. The Jewish people come from her because she has the strength and the adherence to morality and truth. And these are character traits that we need in order to accomplish our mission. Right? If we're going to bring morals and ethics to the world, and we're going to really change the way the world sees God, then we need to have like a backbone. We need to be strong. We need to not look to the left and to the right, seeing what everybody else is doing, but we have to be, humble, but know the truth of what we're doing. Remember what we said last week about the character traits, like our DNA is being implanted here with these matriarchs. And this is what we're talking about. The traits that Rivka had to withstand that type of life growing up is implanted in us that we could withstand it living amongst all of the nations over the last few thousand years that the Jewish people have had to endure. Now, as a Jewish people, this is one of our greatest struggles, both on an individual basis, but also on a national level, right? We're constantly being pulled to the ways of our diaspora countries or our diaspora nation, right? So for us as Canadians or as Americans in the Western world, we're really being pulled in a lot of different directions, so much so after 2,000 years of this exile that we don't even realize it sometimes, or most of the time, I would say. And many times, it's the Western world is actually contradictory to the Torah. And it's our Jewish strength that's like innate inside of us, and that's searching for truth, that keeps us going generation after generation, right? Like I always ask the question to my students, if you're Jewish sitting in this room today, like that was a lot of strength and adherence to Torah practice and Jewish culture and heritage that's been going on for almost, I would say 3,000 years. Somebody worked really, really hard for you to be here today. One of the descriptions that the Jewish people are called is that we are a stiff-necked people. I don't know if you've heard that before. What does it mean to be stiff-necked? It sounds kind of negative to be stiff-necked. It sounds like we're stubborn, right? We don't bend. We're not, team players. It sounds like that. But it's actually meant to be stubborn in a good way. Okay, so yes, every character trait has a positive and a negative. The negative of being stiff-necked is that you'll never bend or see other people's perspectives, and you're kind of hard-lined in your way. But the positive trait of being stiff-necked is how we are when it comes to our values, right? How we are when we fight for justice, when we fight for truth, when we fight for, value of life. And as Jews, we do know what we stand for. Even Jews that are not so connected, a Jew knows what's right and wrong. And it's not a small thing. This is a big deal. This is a character trait that Rebecca teaches us. And we're going to see, as we study Jewish history, that her grandson Joseph also has this trait when he's in Egypt, and he doesn't bend to the way of the Egyptians. He stays true to who he is. So it's not a coincidence that the Torah explains to us about her upbringing being the complete opposite of where she's going. So she shows us that we can be more than where we came from, right? We all start out in different families, in different places, in different circumstances. But this is really a Jewish value that's ingrained in us from Rebecca, that we have the ability to rise above our circumstances, whatever that may be. It means that we can leave our childhoods behind, whatever that looks like. For every person, it's different. And we can go into adulthood building a better future for ourselves. It's not the Jewish way to complain and wallow in our circumstance, to give up and say, well, I had it rough. This is who I am. I can't help it. Take it or leave it, right? Rivka shows us that if she can leave, like she's able to leave that life of dishonesty and immorality, then we can grow beyond our circumstances. Ultimately, if we are truthful and moral in our daily lives, we could move in that upward direction too. And we do this because we are strong and we are resilient, just like Rebecca. So when Eliezer, Abraham's right-hand guy, sets out to find Yitzchak, Isaac, a wife, he says to God, send me a sign so I know I found the right girl. Like, this is like he's the first matchmaker, by the way. Okay. So he's going out to make a shidduch, we say, to go make a match. So how does he know he has the right girl? So he says to God, like, send me a sign. And before he approaches the well, he goes, like he's approaching the family, Abraham's family, his cousins, his uncles. He knows where he's going, to that village. And he says, I'm going to go get water for my camel. And perhaps if there's someone there that doesn't just offer me a drink, but also offers my camel a drink, then perhaps she'll be the one. So why is this the guideline? Like, this is what Eliezer says. This is going to be the one who comes and offers me a drink and also offers my camel a drink. Why that guideline? Why not some other guideline? Because Eliezer understands that, and I think this is what we want for our children, that anyone who would go out of their way to help a stranger is someone who is worthy. And Rivka, she does just that. Eliezer goes to the well. Rivka happens to be there, and she offers him a drink. And it's described, she hurriedly, like quickly, gives him water, and then she rushes to get water for the camel. So she's not just doing it like, okay, I'll get you water. She's really like moving on it. And she does this before he even asks. So here we see someone who is devoted and kind and willing to help out someone she doesn't know. And this is, again, very meaningful because of the family she was raised in, who were very greedy. And here she is, this girl going out of her way to help a stranger. So we learn from this that we have a lot of opportunities to help others, regardless of our circumstances, regardless of how bad it is at home, or whatever it is. We can help others no matter what. And this is another Jewish value that she really teaches us from the beginning, that we need to give tzedakah. And tzedakah doesn't just mean money. Tzedakah means we look around at people in our families, in our communities, in our cities, and we see who needs help so that these people can achieve their potential. What can I do to help someone else? And this is really a Jewish value I think most Jewish people would say it's ingrained inside of us. We can't even understand or explain why we have this need to constantly be looking around and helping others. And this is a value that the Jewish people brought to the world. The Torah brought this into the world. It did not exist before. And we see this right away with her, with Rivka, right? What can we do to help someone else? As it is, the Jewish people are the top givers worldwide, statistically. And this is because of the qualities we learn from our matriarchs and our patriarchs. And this is something that we teach our children. It's not in our genetic DNA, but it's in our spiritual DNA. We teach our children from a young age this value. And if every single one of us was always looking around to help someone else, we would obviously live in a much better place. And this is what she does. She rushes to help a stranger at the well. And so we also learn the rushing part is important, that we should rush to do a mitzvah. It's not enough to just wait for an opportunity. We have to seek them out. We have to look around and look for those opportunities to do a mitzvah, to give tzedakah. And that's why the rabbis teach us that it's a higher level to give tzedakah before being asked rather than after being asked. It's still a good level to give after being asked. But if you can notice that it needs to be done and you do it without being asked, that's the highest level of that mitzvah. And we should do that for all the mitzvahs, for all the good deeds, for all the way we treat our neighbors and we behave in this world. We should rush to do it. And that's a much higher level than being passive. And so she meets Eliezer at the well, and she agrees immediately. She agrees she's going to tell her family, I'm going with you, I'm going to marry Isaac. Because just from meeting Eliezer, she knows, and she's a righteous woman with clarity. At the time, she's young, but with clarity, she knows that this is her destiny, so to speak. This is where she should be going. And so she goes with Eliezer to meet Isaac. Like her mother-in-law, Sarah, she picks up her life to embark on a new and meaningful mission. She doesn't let the fear of the unknown stop her, because she understands that in order to accomplish something great, we have to leave our past behind and step out of our comfort zone. Not leave it behind completely, but we have to move forward. And so we also have these experiences in our personal lives. We all have ideas of what we want to accomplish, what we're really capable of. And a lot of the time we convince ourselves we can't do it. We're too tired. I don't know. Maybe I'll do it next year. It's a good idea, but now's not the time. But what she teaches us is that it's okay to jump and say, I'm going to do it. I'm in. And if we do that, we'll achieve so much greater than we ever thought possible. The rabbis tell us that if we take the first step, Hashem will open the door for us. One of our biggest struggles as Jews is that we're in this conflict. We're in this conflict of like body versus soul, so to speak, pulling us in opposite directions, right? And so if we really listen to ourselves, we could be more than we even know. And this is what she did. She knew deep in her soul she had to leave her family behind. She knew she had this opportunity to go marry a righteous man, her uncle's son, her cousin, Isaac. and but she knew who Isaac was. She knew what he was about, and she jumped and rushed at that opportunity. So, like her mother-in-law, she also was barren, which we talked about a little last week. For many years, she could not have a child. And her husband, Isaac, says to her, let's pray for a child together. And so this is different. With Abraham and Sarah, I didn't go into it in the last class, but Abraham actually prays himself for a child, and he doesn't bring his wife into the process. And that's one of the explanations why Abraham then has a child with Hagar, and then it takes longer for him to have a child with Sarah. So Isaac understands what his father had done, and he says to his wife, we're going to pray together. And they pray together for a child. And Isaac himself, I know it's not a class on Isaac, but important to understand, he is a very deep and thoughtful person who, in a way, he's not described in detail in the Torah. It's very interesting. He's the least talked about. But he is a very holy, introspective person. And in a way, he's removed from the physical world. Like, he had that near-death experience when his father took him to be sacrificed. And after that moment, he becomes very introspective, very he pulls back from the physical world. And he's described as a man with discipline and strength. But he is a very holy, holy person. And so when they pray together, their prayers are answered. And he brings his wife. It also talks about their relationship, right? What kind of a relationship they have. Like, they were really a team. And Rebecca finds herself pregnant, and the pregnancy is very difficult. And she doesn't know originally that she's pregnant with twins. Being pregnant with twins, I know, is not very easy. And it comes with, pregnancy period is not very easy. Pregnancy with twins is it's a whole new world. And especially for her, she's experiencing like a lot going on in there. And the Midrash tells us that there was no ultrasound, obviously. So she doesn't know she's having twins, but she knows something's going on. And the Midrash says that when she passes by a house of idol worship, one side of her, like one of the babies, or she doesn't know the baby goes nuts and starts like kicking, and almost she feels like they're trying to get out, and they're pulling towards this house of idol worship. But when she passes a house of God, and there were houses of God then, like places of study where people, not just Abraham and Isaac, but Noah's sons, I'm going to talk about in a minute, actually have a house of study, which would be like the first yeshiva, where they're studying God, monotheism, and what the purpose of the world is. And so when she passes this house of study, the baby gets excited again and starts kicking in that direction. And she's thinking, like, what's happening here? Why is the baby going crazy in this way and then in that way? And so she actually goes to the house of study they're named Shem and Ever. Shem is Noah's son, and Ever is his son, Noah's grandson. And they run the first yeshiva in Abraham's generation. And she goes to them and says, like, what's happening? Can you interpret what's happening? And they have some level of prophecy. And this is what they tell her. They tell her 2 nations are in your womb. So now she knows. It's like the ultrasound of ancient history. Okay. 2 nations are in your womb. 2 separate peoples shall issue from your body. 1 people shall be mightier than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. This is a prophecy to Rebecca. Rashi explains that even in the womb, the 2 children were already going in their separate ways, and they would become 2 nations. 1 will go towards evil, 1 will go towards purity and holiness. The evil one would go towards material and physical matters, and the other towards spiritual matters. And their relationship will be one of eternal conflict, and they will constantly struggle with each other. And one nation will rise in power, or when one rises in power, the other one will fall, and vice versa. They'll go like bouncing back and forth. And these children will be named when Rebecca has them, her and Isaac. They named them Jacob and Esau. And what do we see in generations throughout history? We see the descendants of Esau and the descendants of Jacob in this constant conflict when one is up, the other's down, and vice versa. We see this mirrored throughout all of history. And this is the Jewish struggle. How do we coexist with this other nation who most of the time wants the Jewish people's destruction? Just like in their years, Esau wanted to kill his brother Jacob many times during their lifetimes. And just when it seems like Jacob was safe, where the Jewish people are safe and they're going to be left alone, just leave us alone, right? It always turns. We never know how long it's going to last. Jacob was always like on his tippy toes, like waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Like the Jewish people. Jacob was always waiting. Is Esau coming now with his army? Is he going to kill me? His whole life. Now, Rebecca never tells her husband about this prophecy. And as the twins grow up, Jacob is described as a man who dwells in tents, meaning he learns Torah. He learns the values of his father and grandfather. And Esau is a man of the field. He's the hunter, the gatherer. He's out there with civilization, with the idol worshippers, and he's finding women. And he's busy during the day, but he's bringing home the meat. Jacob is the one who's spiritually connected, and Esau is concerned with the physical. Esau eventually marries a Hittite woman, marries Hittite women, period, plural, and he turns to idol worship. And he forms a nation called the Edomites, who will be, in a way, an enemy nation of the Jewish people later on as they enter Israel after Egypt. And his descendants become the Roman Empire. So that's another history lesson. But back to Rebecca. How does she handle?
And is that actually like traced that about going to the Roman Empire?
The sources tell us that this is the case.
Okay.
The exact tracing, I will get back to you. We know that Esau's descendants are the Edomites. Edom, we're told from our sources, is ancient Rome. Like eventually,
okay.
Comes from ancient Rome, comes from Edom. But also that's a little bit of a sidetrack, but it's important, is the Amalekite, the Amalek nation, also comes from Esau. And Haman, the story of Purim, is an Amalekite. So we see like there's branches coming off of Esau, and we see the behavior between the brothers, we see it play out in history. Similar to how we see the relationship between Ishmael and Isaac, we also see that play out through history. So when it comes to Rebecca, the big question of any mother is, how do you handle these kids? How do you handle these sons? And so one thing that we can learn from Rebecca is that we all have children that are very different than each other. And that could be good, but that can also be hard. Each child has unique talents, unique needs, and they're not the same as each other. And so we learn from her, she was a good mother for them, for both of them, that our role as mothers is to nurture and guide each of our children in the way that is best for them and their individual strengths. This is a Jewish ideal, that we cannot treat our children exactly the same, that every child has different needs. And if we can meet the needs of our individual children, then we're helping them grow to be the best version of themselves that they can be, right? Our job as mothers is to intuitively understand who our children are, figure them out, and help them build them up to their potential. This is our responsibility. So what's interesting is that between Isaac and Rebekah, Isaac, his job really with the sons is he focuses on teaching the Torah, and he's not so concerned with their individuality the way a mother is. The father's job is he passes on the knowledge to the children in a very like matter of fact way, but the mother's job is to dig deep, to direct the children on their path, to advise them, to push them in a certain way with the knowledge. So how do we deal with children who have polar opposites and difficult relationship? Do we get involved? Do we stand back and let them fight it out? And this is a very difficult challenge for Rivka. Right? It's fascinating that right at the beginning of the Jewish story, we have this sibling rivalry that's very intense. And we have a mother and a father who have to manage this situation. They have real life problems. The Torah is not a fairy tale. It's the history of a family that has dysfunction. So why is that? Why give her this challenge? Because everything we learn, again, from the matriarchs and patriarchs, is for us to learn now that we can do this. And this is not some story that happened, 4,000 years ago. This is real life every day. So then the question is, what does she do? What does she do? What do you do? I mean, God forbid, when one kid wants to kill the other. Again, this is very extreme, right? The Torah is pretty extreme. And then we can kind of dissect out what we need from this. So the most famous part of her story is we're going to see how she handles it. And we're going to learn from her the approach that she took, not just with her kids, but how she handled it with her husband. So what story is that? Most people are familiar with the story usually goes, well, Rebekah favored Jacob, okay, which sounds interesting to say because that doesn't sound like what we just said. But Rebekah favored Jacob, and she tricked her husband into giving the younger son, she remembers the prophecy, the younger son, the blessing of the firstborn, that he should continue the mission of bringing God into the world and what it means to be eventually a Jew. And she tricks her husband. I don't know about you, but this doesn't sound like very righteous behavior. Tricking your husband, switching your kids, right? Favoring a child. It doesn't sound so holy to me. And so we have to look deeper into this. Is that really, really what it was about? So we also know that when Isaac is at the end of his life, and Abraham did this and Jacob does this, at the end of their lives, they bless their children. And so Isaac's coming to the end of his life. He knows he's already blind. And it comes time for him to bless Esav, right? And name him as the successor of the family. But Rivka gets involved and she sends Esav out hunting so that Jacob can receive the blessing, right? Just reviewing this quickly. And she tells Jacob, wear your brother's clothes, put animal skin so you feel hairier because Esav was like more rough. And then you'll smell like your brother because he's always out in the field with the animals. And Isaac is blind, so he'll feel you and he'll smell you, heightened senses, and he'll give you the blessing thinking you're the brother. Okay, again, this sounds crazy. Why wouldn't Rebekah just say to Isaac, honey, I never told you the prophecy, but this is what's happening. Why does she go about this in like this roundabout way? So one thing to understand is that she was a prophet in her own right. She had clarity and she knew what was best for her family. And she knew her husband, they were very much a team. And instead of confronting her husband straight on, she went in a roundabout manner to ensure that her husband followed the right path to bless Jacob, which was the right thing to do. She knew that Jacob needed to be the one. So she found a way to make it happen in a roundabout way. So why? This way, when Isaac is giving the blessing, he's giving it with all sincerity. He's not doing it just because his wife told him to, right? If Rebecca said, this is what the prophecy is, this is what you have to do, he might not be fully sincere. Even though he's giving it to Jacob, he doesn't know. He has the sincerity. We've all asked our partners or our spouses to do something for us, and they've done it because we asked them to. But that's not really the ideal way. What Rebecca's teaching us is that the ideal way is for them to want to do it because they also see the value. So when Isaac blesses Jacob, he's doing it with all the sincerity in the world. That's one reason. Second reason, Isaac has complete trust in Hashem and his wife. This is an ideal marriage. Complete trust. So even if he realized he was being tricked, like really did he really not know it was Jacob? He likely did. The sources say he likely knew it was Jacob. But he also knew, and he also understood on a very deep, holy, clear level that his wife would have done it for a reason, not to question it. And that he knew what was going on because of the strength of the relationship, and he followed through with it because he fully trusted his wife. That's a marriage. And he put on the show of being tricked in order not to embarrass his wife and Jacob. That's what some of the sources say. I think that's pretty powerful. Third reason, Rivka also wants to save Isaac the embarrassment of giving the wrong son the blessing. She doesn't want him to be embarrassed that he gave Esav the blessing and then to see later on the next year or two, 3, 4, 5 years, that it was a mistake, right? If Isaac blessed Esav and it doesn't turn out well, then Isaac's holding a lot of responsibility and embarrassment. And so she's saving her husband's embarrassment. So pretty powerful understanding of this story that seems to be about trickery, but really is about holiness and trust and humility and sincerity. And so the story goes, Esav returns. He's very angry. His anger is extreme, and he wants to kill his brother. And immediately, Isaac knows his wife was right. His wife was right. So we have to realize that their relationship was one of trust and holiness. It was a real partnership. And when she's doing this, she's doing it with the best of intentions, and Isaac knows this. And she handles the situation in a way that it needed to happen, so the deserving son and the rightful heir receives the blessing that was needed. And by the way, Jacob is called Jacob. The word Akev means heel. He was born grasping Esav's heel because Esav pushed himself out first. But really, the sources tell us that Jacob was supposed to be first. So Rebecca had clarity on this situation. And Isaac was not so clear because, like his father Abraham with Ishmael, they wanted to believe in their sons, which is you want your father to believe in you. That's good. And his judgment was clouded in a way with Esav. And it's interesting because in Judaism, we have a physical world and we have a spiritual world that we understand. We're trying to rectify the two together. And that's what that's what Judaism is about. And if we think about it, Isaac was blind at the end of his life physically, but spiritually, right? He was blind to his son's behavior. And so the lesson is, like Sarah, when we know what is right for our family, we have to forge forward with that clear direction. What Rebecca does, which is difficult to do, is she does it in a very quiet, humble way, not to embarrass or challenge her husband outwardly. She does it very respectfully. That is a challenge as a Jewish woman, as any woman, and a wife. And essentially, she had pure intentions, and she really didn't do anything wrong. In fact, she did everything right. So sometimes we have to give a nudge without calling attention to what we're nudging for. And it's very hard to do, especially when you are a strong, talking about myself, a strong-willed woman. That is very difficult to do. It's a lot easier to say, just do this because I said so. It's very hard to like nudge in a roundabout way where everybody's on board and everybody thinks they did it themselves, right? Also with our children. In our generation, in the last few generations, women want to speak. We want to be loud. We want to speak our minds, and we should. There's a time to stand up, but there's also a different way. There's also a time to be quiet, a time to be humble, and we can actually achieve a lot when we're quiet and humble if we do it in the right way. And this is Rivka's essence. She is an influencer who knows what is best, but acts in a way that is not at the expense of another person's self-respect. And we see this when she meets Eliezer at the well. She handles the situation similarly. Interesting, you're wondering why there's a rope there at the bottom of the screen. Rivka's name means connection or bind. One definition says it means a double yoke holding two disparate elements together. And when the Torah introduces us to Rivka, it is in the same verse that Abraham is looking for a wife for Yitzchak. And the last time the Torah mentions her name is when she is looking for a wife for her son Jacob. She's about relationships. She's about togetherness. She's about binding. And if we look at the meaning of her name, we see the connection with marriage. Marriage is a pull and a push and a pull and a push. And it's about taking two people who hopefully have similar values at their core, but who are very different than each other, and putting them together. And as a Jewish mother, as Rivka, as a mother, she's challenged with this with her sons. The two nations that are at odds with each other, she has to find a way to be a family altogether. So what's interesting about the word to bind or tying together is that it takes three strands of a rope to make a rope strong, right? If you have two strands, it unravels very easily. It's not strong. Same if you think of like a stool, you need three legs of a stool to stand straight, right? To stand steady. Two ropes is not strong enough to last. It's going to unwrap, it's going to rip, unravel. But when you have a third rope, you have a lasting strength. And so the Jewish people needed 3 generations to make a lasting family. Abraham and Sarah, Yitzhak and Rivka, and then their son Jacob will make the 3rd generation that's going to make the Jewish people last. When there is trust in each other, when there is humility and sincerity, there is a relationship that is binding. And this is what Rebecca represents for us. I'm just going to ask you to hold on one moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So we learn a lot from Rebecca. So let's just do a quick review. We learned that we can and we must rise above our circumstances. We learned that we should always be looking forward to what we can do and take steps to achieve that potential. We learned that one of the greatest qualities of being a Jew is helping others, and that we have to do it willingly and actively. We should rush to do the mitzvah, and we should do it with kindness and with intention. We learn how to handle conflict in a family, to subtly and humbly guide our children to their destinies. We learn that in a marriage, to be a unified team with our spouse is at the core, and that if things are fractured, the trust is lost. We learn that ultimately God is in control, and if we look at our lives through this lens, then we can understand our purpose, how we're moving forward in the world. And we also learn from Jacob and Esav in conflict that it's not just an external conflict between these brothers or between the nations, but we also have a conflict within ourselves. We have the conflict of our bodies and our souls wrestling with each other. Jacob represents the spiritual, our souls, right? Our strive for truth, our strive for knowledge, our morality. And Esav represents our bodies, the physical world. We want material things, we want physical possessions, we want physical, like immediate gratification. And we have emotions that drive us and take us off track, right? Anger, resentment, jealousy. This is Esav inside of us. So we also have a battle. And our goal, like what Rebecca did, is to have this strength where our soul can feel comfortable being true to who it is, who we are within our surroundings. And it's all of these qualities that make her the perfect candidate for our second matriarch. That these qualities, these characteristics, these traits are inside of our DNA, inside of our spiritual DNA. And if we tap into it, we can also achieve greatness. So when we're faced with challenges with our children, with our spouses, with ourselves, we should ask ourselves, how would Rivka do it?
Mhm.
Thank you so much for listening.
It's interesting that you're saying that